way back in 2011, that was our first step towards the virtualization. And that time, our focus was more on the consolidation of data centers and reduce the real estate space. And we actually had a success story where we could consolidate almost 250 servers into just 4 high-end physical servers. And that gave us a confidence to go ahead and move a majority of our users on virtual desktops. And though, especially in India, around that point in time, we did not have too many success stories, and that too on VMware. But given our understanding of the technology and then our experience also with few clients, we were quite confident that these things are going to work. And that point in time, I could say the majority of focus was more around flexibility, scalability, security, and from an IT point of view, the manageability was a big task of managing those physical desktops. Those were there, but if we go back to our business model, which is more into the professional services area, which we have been doing remotely for our clients, and that's where this whole the business model started way back in December 2000 when we started our company. It was more as an outsourcing industry where we were getting work from our global locations and executing that work in India. And in 2005, we went outside India and then opened our second delivery center, which was in China, and then subsequently at other places. But the whole positioning also started changing, and then with some of the events, global events, including that financial meltdown, we also looked at how we innovate ourselves. And I think Radhika can probably maybe add more to this, but this positioning is very, very important in our business, how we go to the industry and then and how difficult it was for us also in the initial phase to shed the tag of a typical BPO or outsourcing kind of player, because we were actually not that. And one of the key requirements in our business is to continue delivering our services to our clients. And most of the contracts carry this clause around business continuity, security, and that's very, very important for our business. And all our investments in the technology and in fact, some of the innovations we have worked on in past, that had to have a component of delivering services which are always available and secure. And when we designed this whole VDI platform, those were a couple of points I can say which were high on the agenda, apart from what I spoke earlier. And we had to demonstrate that how quickly we can recover and how secure it is. And because during that time, especially with, in our industry, we did not have any example, except our clients. But when I talk about some of our competitors, they did not have any examples, and some of our clients were also a little apprehensive of moving to VDI, because then people could access that machine from anywhere and on any device. But somehow we had the confidence. We had the confidence that that these things are going to work in the long term, and we kept on increasing our workforce. We initially had just 500, 600 folks. I mean, though the story we had in first phase to move about 1,500 users, and we actually did that, but we moved that in phases, and from 500 to 1,000 and 1,500, and now approximately, I think anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 users are on VDI. And we are now exploring, I mean, though we slowed down in the midway, because of various challenges and the business demand. But because of this situation, we are actually considering again to invest more on the VDI platform. And going back to the situation, for instance, VDI is something which has worked very well for us in various situations. And I mean, this situation obviously is global in nature, has a much wider impact. But we had few situations across global offices. In India, we have gone through many events, uh, especially in Gurgaon, when we had either maybe waterlogging problem because of heavy rains, or maybe because of some community rights, and there was few other events. And even in Chile last year, we had uh, the social unrest. And even in, I mean, this whole pandemic started from China. The first office which we had to shut for some time was China, and now the first office which we have started again is China. And the China office was shut for about, I can say, 6 weeks, and and the VDI actually came very handy, because VDI is something what people can access anytime, anywhere, on any device, and there is no issue in terms of security, where you you can have cases of data breaches where people can upload or download anything from their machine. I mean, all day obviously they can see the data, which I think in some cases I can say there are some barriers which are breaking now, but there were some barriers. For example, some of our clients were not even happy of taking employees or taking mobile phones inside the office by employees, and some of those things are also not there. And in fact, there was a discussion I was having in a separate forum where some of those strict controls which were there earlier and probably did not result in anything during that time, and those are getting removed by many clients. And it's not just for our industry, but in fact across the industry, where some of the clients had controls even on their own workforce. They are in a way either compromising or maybe redrafting their whole security manual. And in fact, the way risk assessments are happening, those are also changing. But having said that, these were some of the initial stories which led us to continue our business in this current situation.
Yeah, so I was interested in, like, you're talking of this. I would like to know what about your, say, virtualization journey. Like, you're talking of
Mhm.
VDI. So if you look at the 10-15 years, how has virtualization grown? What have been the inflection points? Like, what were the things that gave it a boost? What innovations did you come out? And could you also spend, like you said, the economic crisis? So if you see, like, virtualization, all these tragedies and economic crisis, riots, and that effects. So if you look at around the 10-12 years, what, if you look at, like, the graph, what have been the boosters which increased virtualization? And now, I mean, now the whole, thanks to the COVID-19 crisis, the whole situation has changed. I mean, we are going to have more remote working, we are going to have more
Yeah.
virtualization, we are going to have a bigger mobile workforce. Like, you're talking of
Mm.
mobile, now you have to allow mobile
Mhm.
work from home. So
Yeah.
I was just curious, if you look at the virtualization, what have been, like, the triggers? And also I'd like to know what is happening now. And I mean, I'm sure 2021, 22, this whole virtualization, work from home, mobile workforce, it's like, so I just like
Yeah.
your views on that. If you, I don't know, it's slightly long question. If you look at the past, what is
Sure.
happening now and what will happen in the future? I hope I've
Uh,
made myself clear. Yeah.
yeah. No. No. I'll try to maybe answer all the points in this question. Maybe I'll start with the financial crisis. See, before that financial crisis, we were growing at a rapid pace. In fact, our growth uh, was running in 2 digits, and we were adding people year after year. And before that meltdown, we had outside India, we had 3 global offices, and and that financial meltdown gave us an opportunity to rethink on our strategy, especially how we are utilizing technology and how we are investing in various parts of the technology domain rather than just building on top of what was already there. And we were stacking almost everything, whether it was hardware, software, and that time actually gave us a thought that how do we optimize, because that point in time the costing was one of the primary drivers which were leading towards the innovation, because you had to optimize, you had to save the cost. And virtualization actually came around that time on our mind, where we uh, we had to cut down on the real estate space. We had to cut down on the workforce also. When uh, an IT team, you did not want to have too many people, and when some of these cost optimization stories come your way, you have to look at how you can manage the work with maybe lesser money and lesser people around. And virtualization was the story around that point in time, which started with server virtualization first, followed by desktop virtualization. And it started from India, and then we gradually replicated that across all our global offices. So today, when we talk about, and in fact, it did not stop at all our offices. It went up to our co-locations, which we had, I think, three of them at that point in time between US and UK. And again, we had racks racks full of servers in those co-locations also. What happened after that everything we started looking at from consolidation and integration perspective, where we could one, reduce the cost, and second, the manageability of these, so that we can have an optimized workforce also. So today, as I said, all our data centers globally are virtualized. Even before we shifted heavily on the cloud, when all the co-locations and some of the data centers we were utilizing outside our delivery centers, they were also virtualized. And when we look at today, when we are talking heavily on the digital transformation, one of the things what we do, any application or any new product we develop, we try to have that in the cloud first. And you can say it's like what Microsoft also preaches to the world, that cloud first, and that's what we also believe in at Evalueserve, where we say it's cloud first. And whenever there is any demand for any additional compute or any infrastructure, we look at the cloud first. And in most of the situations, it works, and that's the reason why we are not heavily dependent on our data centers, but on the cloud now. And when we look at some of the things now and in future, see, as I said, the digital transformation is taking the center stage. Even when we talk to some of our clients, at how some of the things are going to change, and in fact, in various discussions with the clients and even the CIO community, I can clearly see that digital transformation is something people have to actually pick up the speed. Even if they were on the journey, they actually have to travel maybe a bit more. Some of the people who did not think about it so aggressively, they actually have to be very aggressive now, so that uh, they can continue to transform. And then also, when they talk about this even work from home, then how people can actually be more effective and productive when they have to work on some of the enterprise systems.
Let me try to add something here, Sunil, and probably
Yeah.
that might also help. So the way the business has changed over the years, you cannot confine an individual to a box. For example, I might need 8 cores, for example. Radhika might need 16 cores. Sachin might need 32 cores. And you cannot say to an individual, hey, you cannot work because your machine is not good enough to support that kind of compute. So everybody has got their own individual way of working and own individual applications working. And these applications keep on changing. So you need to have an environment that is good enough to let me tweak the machine as per requirement. Right? You cannot block me within a box and say, hey, this is your limit. It has to be a limitless kind of thing. Whatever I need, whatever business needs, we should be able to deliver it. And secondly, when you have physical machines and machines, each machine, even though they are of same make or brand, is bound to behave in its own, in its own way, right? Each machine behaves differently. Each machine has its own identity. You need an environment where you have to have a uniformity, if need be. And all of this comes inside your data center within a closed boundary which is secure. So you get the machine which is secure, but then there is no limit to it. And yet there is a uniformity in it. So if I've got 50 people, 40 needs similar kind of machine, I should be able to deliver it to them. Same make and model of machines. Out of that 40, 20 says I need high compute. Okay, you get high compute. 20 say I don't need high compute. So you reduce it. So that flexibility to increase, decrease, and play around is what the world is heading to. And that's what virtualization gives us, that flexibility. And the way the applications, the operating systems, the way Microsoft, the way Adobe, they are also developing, your machine should be capable enough to adjust to the applications that are coming in its own way. So today we have Windows 10 X version. Tomorrow it would be Windows 10 Y version. Tomorrow it would be Z version. Then SQL 2012, then SQL 2014, 16, 18, 20. So they will keep on upgrading. And then your hardware should be good enough, and your virtualization layer should be good enough to adapt to all these changes and deliver it. It should not be confined to the limit that, okay, it's now that Microsoft has launched something, this machine is not capable enough to adjust to that application. So it should be application centric, it should be compute centric, it should be universal, and yet I should be able to tweak it. That's what the norm is.
So just continuing with what you said, so then what are the basic components of virtualization? So when you have to go in for virtualization,
I mean, if you talk about how the world is moving, see, the adoption of virtualization or adoption of the cloud, it's sort of becoming a normal. In fact, it became, I mean, the people are talking about a new normal now, about various things. But when you spoke about cloud, or maybe let's talk about the initial stage of cloud, people were saying that just like other few things which came in the IT industry, and like every year there is a new term or maybe a new area to focus, or you can say the new buzzword, yeah. And then cloud is not going to stay here for long. And now people have realized that cloud is going to stay here for long, and it has become a sort of necessity for many organizations. I mean, look at some of the startup ecosystem. They do not have so much money or so much capex to invest into the hardware. Even maybe small to mid-size organizations, whenever they have to scale up, it's very, very difficult to invest huge amount of money, and which they do not know how the world is going to change, and the way technology is changing. And Anuj can also share his experience. I mean, even if we talk about our experience, whenever we invest in any technology from a hardware standpoint in a data center, after a year, when we talk about the renewal, and we in most of the situations we figure out that that hardware is going obsolete, and probably after 1 or 2 years, it will go end of sale, and then support costs will increase. Some of these things are sort of the stories for many large organizations as well. And in a very recent situation, in a client facing situation, we were actually helping them to modernize their entire data stack. And uh, and one of the things they wanted was to increase the speed of doing business, or you can say the speed of doing this whole data processing, analytics, and obviously they were hard pressed on time and costing. And and in those situations, the only thing which you can commission without which you can launch without investing too much time and money is the cloud. And and it gives you speed, it gives you performance, it gives you scalability, and you can scale up, scale down as and when you want. You don't have to worry about obsolescence of any hardware or software if you're using a software as a service. These things have become part and parcel of your life. This entire Office 365 story, for example, which is a perfect example of software as a service. Microsoft got it right in third attempt. They had a couple of initial pilots, and in fact, we also participated in one of them. It did not work well, and now it has become sort of the first thing, or maybe the cloud-based emails, whether it's Microsoft or any other. And similarly, virtualization platform. Now, I mean, we partner with VMware long back because we could see this whole technology innovation around that coming from VMware. But now, when we look at the world, I mean, there are so many options, and and everybody has a story to sell, and then people are actually going up to them depending on their use cases, depending on maybe various situation. But having said that, this is actually is there, and this is not going to go away.
Okay. So also like enterprises, I mean, it's very tough to come on the cloud, migration of data to scale up, to choose public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud. So how has been the migration journey of companies going on the cloud? I'm sure, has it been smooth, or it has many roadblocks? What have been the major roadblocks like?
Yeah, I think these days, I mean, things are very, very transparent. I mean, though you will still find some outliers in this, maybe some exceptions, but I think we had challenges. I mean, I will say, when I say we, I mean not we as like Evalueserve, but in general in the industry, when people were talking about a lot of challenges around data migration and application migration. And see, there are two or three ways how people look at the cloud, and that's where the journey also starts. The first is lift and shift, and most of the guys actually do that. And when they wanted to experience the cloud, they actually did that. And the next step in the journey is to start optimizing so that your application or your workload is cloud ready. And third is obviously really the whole governance and the cost management piece. So these are typically the three stages what people start with. But most of the mature organizations who have experienced the cloud, or maybe who are migrating now, they know it's not a cost saving aspect anymore. They actually want to optimize it highly, again from a cost, performance, and management point of view. So they actually make their workload and applications cloud ready, and that makes more sense in current environment where I mean not just the COVID one, but in general when you see a high level of maturity in the cloud setup. you want to make your applications cloud ready and try to use the modern way of using cloud, where you actually talk about containers, functions, this whole serverless computing, using platform rather than having this complete virtual machine, and then you start configuring and deploying a lot of tools and softwares on it. People actually try to use it, the full capability of the cloud, and use it to maximize the performance and optimize the cost and manageability.
Okay. So also another thing, like you've talked about like your journey in the last 10-15 years. You talked of the virtualization journey, the cloud journey. Now, like coming to data, like data is the new oil. How has been the data journey? Because I mean, even the amount of data that is coming has mushroomed. And also, like, all the data is not good data. There's a lot of unstructured data, good data, bad data. How do you, like, using data analytics, or how do you sift through that? And also another thing, like when people talk of the 2020s, they're saying there's going to be even a greater data explosion. Like I think like one of the surveys put IoT devices, the upper limit may be like even 500 billion IoT devices. So if you see the amount of data that is coming, and I think after COVID-19, this crisis, I mean, again, like the virtualization, the remote working, I think like, what has been your data journey, and like, will we require more AI, ML tools? I don't think like we humans will be able to handle the magnitude of data, analyze it, and make sense of it. So maybe you can tell something about the data journey and how we are going to handle data in the future.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to give both perspective, because I've seen this in both internal as well as in the client situation. And I mean, you're right. The magnitude of data is increasing, and Anuj can obviously share in terms of the data size of the the, uh, the amount of data we generate within Evalueserve globally. And that when we originally started, it was I think few GBs, and then it has grown up to, I think, multi terabytes now, and this continue to grow. And you're right. I mean, there are all sort of data, structured, unstructured, and a lot of data which you can relate to, and there's a lot of data but probably you have to probably again synthesize and analyze separately. There are obviously challenges, and there are solutions also which we try to use, and we are using a lot of automation around it, and and data analytics is something what we sell as a service, and that is one of the key growth driver for us. And if you look at our new positioning, which is again more around analytics, we also consume that in a big way internally to come up with insights which are useful for our business as well as for various corporate functions. Since last couple of years, I can say there's a lot of focus on the automation, and we actually are trying to set up a COE also around RPA, which is again using a lot of this data and processes. Using a lot of data and trying to automate a lot of processes internally, and even on the analytics side, we have started. Though we had this on-premise analytics setup for a long time, but we have started consuming analytics platform from the cloud, and AI and ML are becoming an integral part of, I mean, all the work we do internally as well as externally. So this, you are right. The amount of data which is in explosion stage cannot be handled with traditional tools, or manual effort. Obviously, is something which is nowhere close to even look at maybe some of the possible insights. So this whole lot of automation and AI and ML, I think will flourish, and then will also grow big.
And just to quickly add to this, when we talk about data, data is directly proportionate to backup. So if you have 1 terabyte of data, you have to back up also 1 terabyte of data, right? And the more amount of data you have, your restoration time would also increase, right? So I have 1 terabyte of data, I have to back up 1 terabyte of data, and in case of a disaster, I have to restore also 1 terabyte of data. So how do we do that? So first thing first is, there are certain basic principles like deduplication, compression. Let them come into picture. So you compress your data, you dedupe your data, and then you start the churning. So your, say, 100 terabyte would become 50 terabyte. Then you implant, machine learning and AI on top of it. So out of 50 terabyte data, now you need to classify what is critical for me. And then you start your recovery strategy and the backup strategy. And that's how the world would go. And to your previous question, also let me add something here. When it comes to cloud, there has to be very clear-cut demarcation between what is private cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. Not everything I would want to be on public cloud. Not everything I would want to be on private cloud. And not everything cannot be on hybrid also. For example, if I have an antivirus on my laptop, for example, I would want it to be locally deployed on my machine. Right? What if I'm not connected to my internet or my broadband? That makes my machine vulnerable, right? So I have to make my machine secure. So it has to be very clear-cut demarcation. What is to become on private cloud? What is to go on public cloud? What is to go on hybrid cloud? As long as that demarcation is clear, then the transitions are very simple.
So Anuj, I just have a small add-on question. Like you talked of the demarcation between private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud. Another fourth the term I'm hearing is multi-cloud. So where does multi-cloud fit into all this? It's become very confusing, at least for the common person.
So multi-cloud is the new norm. So earlier we used to have, AWS started off this journey. So AWS used to be the only sole player, and it was primarily focused on consumer market. Then they started getting into enterprise, and then Azure also came into picture. Then Google steps in, and now you have over 1,000 companies who are doing public cloud. Some are following certain norms, some are not following any norms, some are following country-specific norms, some are following region-specific norms. So much so it has grown up traditional companies who used to be a typical classic hosted server provider organization, they are also now stepping into cloud, right? And that makes a typical journey of what is known as multi-cloud. So people would want a server to be in one cloud, and hypothetically assuming that if that cloud itself is somehow disrupted or is blocked, then I should have the leverage of running an application or alternate cloud, and I do a syncing between these two clouds. Now, cloud providers of late has opened up their doors to be integrated with other cloud providers. For example, Azure can talk to AWS. It's slightly complicated, but they can talk to each other. Similarly, my private cloud can also talk to 10 public cloud environment. So multi-cloud is the new norm. You will shortly hear Geo Cloud also, which will be geographically distributed cloud.
Okay.
So this will keep on coming, and each will have its own terms and conditions, own flips and flaws. But that's how the journey would be.
So
Sunil, if I may add, see this whole this public cloud, then private cloud, then hybrid cloud. See, this is where some of the companies adopted the cloud, and how you could push that adoption within the enterprises. This story started with public cloud by AWS, and then this when enterprises started adopting because of a lot of security related, performance related challenges, and this whole private cloud story started happening, which was nothing but more around uh, improving on the virtualization space, and then how you can manage that better, the way you manage some of the cloud. And then there were companies who could not move everything to the cloud, and they had to maintain significant amount of infrastructure on premise, but at the same time they wanted to have uh, some workloads running on the cloud. But from a manageability point of view, they wanted to, again, do not want to manage them separately, but a single place. And that's where this hybrid cloud story came in. Now the multi-cloud, one example is what Anuj mentioned in terms of creating redundancies, because now there are critical workloads or maybe significant amount of workloads running on one cloud, and then companies do not want to just put everything in one basket, and then when there is some disruption or some problem with that company, then and it can be related to anything. It can be technical challenges, financial challenges, or maybe regulatory challenges, which can disrupt services. The second most important aspect, which is actually driving this adoption of multi-cloud, and where I think all cloud service providers have realized that they'll have to give that space, is the specific functionality launched by some of these players. And AWS, Microsoft, or or Google, or maybe all other players, they would have specific use cases which would be suited best for a specific problem, or maybe a specific situation in a company, and that's where probably you will try to get your hands on the best. I mean, for example, maybe if let's say for virtualization, I'm using VMware, but maybe for maybe DR or maybe for backup, I'll end up using something else. I mean, though I would have maybe same solution coming from VMware, but given the skill sets, given the that's one of the other thing, the availability of skill sets, and maybe ease of doing something better is probably I find in somewhere else. That's where the multi-cloud strategy is something what we see uh, getting adopted widely within the organizations.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just come back to the business continuity part. So like you talked, like during this crisis, you shut down the China center, you opened the China center. So how did you, if you just could tell in short a few points, how did you ensure business continuity during the COVID crisis? And what tips, based on that, what tips will you give to other enterprises?
Yeah, see, if I talk about our readiness, I mean, we spoke about this earlier, and you've covered that in the story as well. Look, because of the business requirement, we were actually almost right there, and for us, it was just another event. Obviously, scale is slightly different. We probably never had a situation before this where globally we were working from home, the entire workforce, and uh, and this is like a real test of everything what we have built over the past 20 years. And luckily it worked for us because we had been stress testing it for different locations, even though individually based on different situations. uh, but as I think Anuj mentioned previously, that we could just launch those machines quickly. And I mean, for our people, I mean, if they are not able to work from home, work from office, they can access their machine from anywhere, any device, and they can quickly log on and continue doing the business. And in fact, there's some of the new projects we are picking up from our clients. Uh, in some situation, I mean, there has not been even any on-site onboarding as such, and people are working remotely. And that's again a sort of a new way of doing things, but that's how we are working. And when we had to first shut our China office, again we were back up very quickly, and by the time China office started opening, we had to close down other offices globally. All other four major centers, delivery centers, are as of now closed. India being the largest delivery center, that is still closed, but we are 100% up. Sorry.
So,
So the best thing that Sachin did over the years was that he ran ear drill campaign so many times that when actually crisis happened, people were so aware of the fact that what is to be done, how it is to be done, what are the process that you have to follow, the steps you have to do, and that holds the key. I mean, we never had to communicate people what to do and how to do. They were aware of the fact that what is to be done and how it is to be done. It was only a matter when companies said, okay, there is a disaster, start working from home. They knew what is to be done.
Yeah.
And that was because Sachin did ear drills so many times in the past with the organization that people knew exactly what is to be done. No communication, no SOP, no training, nothing was conducted. People simply went home and started working. It was as simple as that.
Yeah, thanks, Anuj. In fact, I mean, that's one of the important part I can say where some organizations struggled big time. I mean, despite maybe getting their hands on to some remote working systems, they were not able to manage the change. And the change management in this situation is a key where people have to understand that how they can continue doing business without any disruption. And because of these drills, because of the kind of our work environment, or you can say the kind of flexibility we have in the system where people can work from home without compromising with the performance and security. That these things actually came very handy for us, where we did not have to spend too much time in doing that change management, where we have to train or basically explain the know-how of the systems in this situation.
So I think we are out of time. Maybe one last question. You can tell in 30 seconds, 1 minute. Key learnings of the COVID-19 crisis from you. That's it.
So the key learnings, what I can say, even though things worked well for us, we did not have to go through too many challenges. But this situation helps us look at a few things which we could do better, and maybe things which we did not probably look at in detail so much earlier, because scale was not so high, and there were very few or maybe limited number of cases globally, and that too on a need basis, and were for a very short period of time. But now this situation is getting prolonged, and I think as the world is talking, I think this will become a new normal. I mean, yesterday, if you have read the Twitter's boss, he announced that that employees will work indefinitely from home, and on the other hand, Google is sharing a graded plan to have people back in office. And then I read another article where people are saying that the cubicles gave a way to bench style sitting, and now the bench style sitting will go back to the cubicles because of this social distancing and this whole thing around COVID. And there's obviously there are mixed reviews where people are talking about that continuity of work from home, and then reduce workforce to maybe having different way of managing people within the office. But in our case, I think it will continue to be work from home, either fully or partially, I think, for some more time. And when you look at your entire organization working from home, then there are a lot of challenges. I mean, for example, managing and monitoring how people are working from home, and I mean how they are managing. Even I mean simple things like extending your help desk support when there is no centralized way of managing these uh, calls or maybe requests, and that's also a bit of a challenge. And you don't have any. I mean, you typically create that kind of a centralized toll-free number or maybe toll number where people can reach. It's
Right.
mostly email, telephonic, or maybe a tool-based support. That's a challenge which we'll have to actually look at. That how do we improve on that side? The second biggest piece I can say is more around security, which again I think everybody's talking about, and we are not very different from that. There are a few areas which we, as I said, which we did not look into much detail because of the scale and the duration. But now, because of this scale and the kind of timelines we see, we need to look at how do we look at maybe the, the granular aspect of security when people are working from home. And remote working is something which people were not used to, and now people are actually there on their home network throughout the day.
Right.
And when we start looking at some of, I'll just give one basic example. I mean, we are looking at how people use internet home. I mean, if you know these days, everybody at home at least will have maybe some 5 or 6 connected devices.
Right.
I mean, though India probably will not have maybe large number of smart homes, but you still have maybe some or other form of the IoT devices, even as simple as, let's say, Amazon Echo or Google Home, or your mobile phones, iPad, some of the gaming devices, if and TVs, for example, people have their TVs, their maybe in some cases people have their smart home, then they'll have more connected devices, and most of these devices do not have passwords.
True.
And even your router, the standard router configuration when it comes uh, from the market, or even let's say if Airtel or maybe some of these guys are installing at your home, they'll give you a default IP and default admin user. And in most of the situation, people do not change that password and that IP, standard IP. And you can manage that from a web browser. You do not have to connect Ethernet cable
Right.
to that router. So that is obviously one of the things which we are looking at now, that how actually we tell people to change the default admin and have a password policy for all their devices at home wherever possible. And then obviously how to work securely from home. So some of these campaigns are running. These, I think, some of the challenges will come in the new normal, that how do you ensure both security as well as the productivity from home.
So I think it was great talking to you.